Bina flew with his vimana as an enormous ray was as brilliant as the sun and made a noise like thunder of a storm. This was written in the Mahabharata around the 3rd to 4th century BC. And this isn't even the earliest mention of these flying machines of the gods. Nor is it the only religion that has these types of machines or interactions with the gods. There are even several of them in the Abrahamic faiths as well. What are these machines and who are the beings in them? Welcome to the Occult and the Apocalypse with Kristen, aka Fire Terra Mama, where I tell you how they took what used to be widely known about God, spirituality, and you and locked it away. Come with me while I show you what I've learned from science, religion, cultural beliefs, and mythology to turn the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Now, sometime between 1900 and 1000 BC, so between Abraham and Moses, in the northwest region of the Indian subcontinent, the majority of the Rig Veda, one of the oldest Hindu sacred texts, was written down. However, it's thought to have been orally transmitted hundreds, if not thousands, of years before. Vimanas are featured within it as mechanical birds. In fact, it was the Rig Veda's archaic syntax and morphology that was incredibly important to the reconstruction of the Proto-Indo-European language. Some of it is still, more than 2,000 years later, recited in Hindu prayer. It is, in fact, the world's oldest religious text still in continuous use. Now, interestingly enough, the imagery of Yahweh appearing to Moses and the Israelites seemed to indicate some sort of supernatural accompaniment of machinery in some way. First, Yahweh is described in Exodus 13:21 as, "And Yahweh went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give light to them day and night." In Exodus 19:12, Yahweh says, "And you shall set down bounds for the people all around, saying, Take heed yourselves, do not go up to the mountain or touch its base." Further down in verses 16 through 18, it says, "And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning, there were thunderings and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very mighty, so that trembled all the people who were in the camp. And Mount Sinai was in smoke completely, because descended upon it Yahweh in fire, and ascended smoke like the smoke of a furnace, and quaked the whole mountain greatly." It sounds like something was arriving on Mount Sinai with quite a rumble. Now, shifting a bit, in January 2025, TikTok suddenly lit up with multiple people outside of a mall in Florida who were documenting an incredibly heavy police presence of something to something. Many of the outsiders of the buildings were able to record the response of more than 60 police cars swarming the shopping plaza. Police officers were stood outside in SWAT gear with their guns drawn. And very few videos surfaced from inside the shopping center, and they seemed to show something unusual. Now, the official report was originally that teenagers were fighting with sticks. This later morphed into sticks and fireworks, causing a riot or panic. Like I said, the information coming out of the mall was inconsistent with the official story, but relatively consistent with each other. There was a lot of talk about some beings that seemed to phase and in and out of reality, some type of tall, shadowy beings. People claim that their phones were gone through before they were allowed to leave. Some even claim to having videos deleted. At the end, 4 teenagers were arrested, which we did not see. Nothing was heard of it again. Whispers of those present said aliens or interdimensional creatures 7 to 10 feet tall and seemingly equally confused by their presence. More than 60 police cars, a standoff, all due to 4 unarmed teenagers. Large, shadowy creatures shown navigating through the shopping mall on every scroll and swipe. I'm not sure what I think about this, but I most definitely can't validate or discount it without solid evidence in either direction. So whispers still remain. Now, on the NSA.gov website, there is a PDF called Communication with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And the paper begins, "We are not alone in the universe." It goes on to talk about possible sources of such an event, some sort of contact. There have been congressional hearings by several oversight committees that have been having regular testimony regarding UAP or UFO events, particularly within the government itself. On August 15th of this year, U.S. Representative Anna Paulina Luna reported she had quote-unquote definitive proof of interdimensional beings that can move out of time and space. Interestingly enough, this is a representative of Florida's 13th district, which although is nowhere near this event that happened in January, it's certainly in the same state. There's a lot of thought that we may be that these beings may be living alongside us in an interdimensional parallel dimension sort of way. It's a pretty big theory that these are interdimensional beings. And this so far seems to be backed up by particle physics string theory. Some scientists are starting to draw conclusions that if this is more than a theory, that these interdimensional beings may have influenced human culture throughout history, appearing in folklore and religious texts as gods, goddesses, angels, demons, fairies, other supernatural entities, shaping and molding mankind in one way or another. Suddenly, what was once considered pseudoscience is starting to slowly leak into mainstream theory. The government has released video after video of objects performing unimaginable maneuvers with amazing capabilities and have even brought up having access to quote-unquote biologics, meaning biological organisms. Now, in the book of Enoch, sometimes called Enoch 1, there are several interesting things. Now, Enoch is technically non-canonical for most religions, and the official story is that it never was canonical. However, that being said, the official story is questionable. Enoch remains in the Ethiopian Bible, and it is quoted in the New Testament. Now, Ethiopia is actually a major player in the Bible, and you probably don't know that. The Queen of Sheba, who is supposed to rise up at the end of times, that is a reference to the Queen of Sheba from Ethiopia, who had visited Solomon for his wisdom. In fact, Ethiopia has had a large presence of Jewish people at an early time and were some of the first converts to Christianity. Per the Ethiopian history, the Queen of Sheba had a son with King Solomon, who went on to establish the royal Ethiopian line. It's also said that the son of Solomon took home to Ethiopia without his father's knowledge the Ark of the Covenant. Not only is this the lore, but it's been reported that if you ask the right people within the Ethiopian church, they'll tell you that they have it. Now, the lore goes that Ethiopia was so far away from the Holy Roman Empire that when the rest of the church was told to disregard the Book of Enoch as well as other books, it took so long for the information to reach Ethiopia. By the time the directive came down, the church refused. The Book of Enoch is actually quoted directly in the New Testament as well. And of course, Enoch is an interesting, mysterious, biblical forefather who was given tremendous wisdom and then taken up to heaven alive. In the book of Enoch, we learn that Enoch has prophetic visions and dreams and seems to astrally project through time and space. It is also believed that he may have been the first to develop writing and write things down. There are some that think he could be what's behind the legend of Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, and have had the emerald tablets and possibly even the pyramids themselves attributed to him. Now, in chapter 17 of the first book of Enoch, he writes, "I saw in my sleep what I will now say with a tongue of flesh and with breath of my mouth, which the Great One has given men to converse therewith and understand with the heart." Verse 8 states, "And the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the vision clouds invited me into and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me. And the wind in the vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall which was built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire, and it began to fright me. And I went into the tongues of fire and drew nigh to a large house which was built of crystal, and the walls of the house were like a tessellated floors made of crystals, and the groundwork was of stars and lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven as clear as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. As I entered that house, and it was as hot as fire and as cold as ice. And I quaked and trembled. I fell on my face, and lo, there was a second house, greater than the former. The entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. And in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And the floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings and the path of the stars. The ceiling was flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was crystal, and the wheels therefore were a shining sun. And there was the vision of cherubim, and from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. Fire surrounded portals, wheels, crystal walkways and floors of fire, a throne with flames underneath." Now, the next several chapters of Enoch, it's him being moved from place to place through space and time. This also is likely where the Catholic origin of purgatory came from, because in Enoch, God had made 3 places for the souls of the dead until Judgment Day. One for the righteous, one for the sinners, and one for those who could plead their case. The first place that he's transported to is to see the Pleiades, or the 7 sisters, who are tied together in the sky for some sort of transgression. This concept of a whirlwind taking Enoch up is represented throughout the book of Enoch. In Genesis 5:24, it says, "Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, because God took him." In the New Testament, Hebrews 11:5, it says, By faith, Enoch was taken up from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. Now, it's very interesting for many reasons, but the biggest one is that this verse, the words, he could not be found because God has taken him away, are in quotations. And they're not a direct quote from the Genesis line, okay? This is indicative of quoting even a different text. I tried to research what text that might be. I haven't found it yet, but I will. There's a lot of books that have been discounted, and 3 books of Enoch in total. But books like Jubilees or others that aren't included in the Bible would likely contain wording like this. I've read a few of these, and they add depth and layer to the scriptures that you're more familiar with, Old Testament and New. In Jude 1:14 through 15 states, Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord's coming with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness, and all of the different words ungodly sinners have spoken against them. So, since quoting the book of Enoch is good enough for the writers of the New Testament, it's good enough for me. Now, long before humans were capable of flight, people have been making records of strange things in the sky, strange things in the ocean, and strange things coming out of the earth, and the strange beings that are associated with them. Longer than when humans had written language, there are carvings of what appear to be strange beings, sometimes near or in some sort of aircraft, and these cover canyon and cave walls. There are even carvings of what appear to be gods in spacecraft operating machinery. Reports from the Middle Ages through the 1800s, long before there should be anything in the sky, report after report, similar in nature. Some even claiming crashes and burials, all similar in nature. Even Christopher Columbus recorded strange craft coming from the ocean. All things similar to disclosure events happening around the world right now with governments. Now, in the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, which references the Anunnaki gods and is likely an adaptation of an earlier myth, the god Marduk rises up as king god. In one section it says, he sent forth the 7 winds he had brought to stir up the inside of Tiamat. They rose up behind him. And the Lord raised up the floor storm, his mighty weapon. He mounted the storm chariot, irresistible and terrifying. He harnessed and yoked it to a team of 4. The killer, the relentless, the trampler, the swift. This is interesting for multiple reasons as well. Okay, another god figure riding on a flying object, a divine chariot. This one is described as being pulled by 4 animals, possibly horses or oxen. That's interesting because Revelation has 4 horses, and there are many other divine beings seen as being pulled on horse-drawn chariots throughout history. The goddess Tiamat is the name for the primordial sea, which intermingled with the god Apsu, which was the groundwater or fresh water. They intermingled and produced the gods. But then she takes another consort, and a war amongst the children and grandchildren gods begin. He then goes to use the pieces of her to create creation. He sets up a firmament, constructed stations for the gods, made constellations, etc. He laid out the course of the moon. It's very interesting that some of these gods were born from the water. This is a story told in multiple cultures all over the world. Primordial waters came first. All life, all gods came out of that, or at least one of them did, okay? In specific group of gods, they are sometimes depicted as wearing fish suits. There have also been conclusions drawn between the shape of these suits worn by these gods and the shape of different priestly attire in different religions, especially with like the hats and stuff. I often wonder if this is symbolic of having come out of the water. This comes up again in a minute, so just keep that in mind, okay? Now back to the chariots. In Greek mythology, Helios, later Apollo, drove a chariot pulled by fiery horses across the sky, bringing light to the world every day. In Hindu mythology, the sun god Surya rides a chariot pulled by 7 horses representing the 7 colors of light. In Norse mythology, their sun god Sol drives a chariot across the sky being pursued by the wolf Skoll. This represented the day-night cycle. Now Odin, although not having a chariot, is said to ride an 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, who transports him to other realms. Now, the Dogon tribe, who are people who are indigenous to the central plateau of Mali in West Africa, have a fascinating origin story from their gods and some pretty advanced knowledge of the stars. They're relatively closed about their beliefs, but there are about 400,000 to 500,000 of them now. They're considered to have been previously in history relatively excluded from civilization that was modernizing, and the Dogon believe in one supreme creator called Amma. A lot of these initial creator gods start with an A name. This one is Amma. But they also believe in ancestral spirits known as Nomo, or water spirits. French anthropologists who worked with them during the 30s and 40s documented a system of signs which ran into the thousands, including, quote, in their own systems of astrology and calendrical measurements, methods of calculation, and extensive anatomical and physiological knowledge, as well as system pharmacopoeia, which means medicine making. The key spiritual figures were the Numo and Nomo twins. Twins are actually a common start to ancient religions, and we see it play out across different religions, including the Abrahamic religions, over and over. Numo and Namo appeared as humans from the groin up, but from the groin down they were serpents. Their eyes were red and their tongues were forked. Their religion and oral history suggest that they were visited by those who came from the Sirius star group. In this religion, Sirius B is a companion to Sirius A, a very bright star in the night sky. It is Sirius B that is the home of the Nomo, the amphibious beings that came to Earth to give knowledge and wisdom. Their knowledge of this star system is extensive, and they know about their orbital periods, sizes, and characteristics. They were aware that Sirius B is a white dwarf and has an elliptical orbit around Sirius A. The problem here? Sirius B cannot be seen to the naked eye. It can only be seen with a telescope. They describe it as a very small, dense, and heavy star with an orbital period of about 50 years. It, according to them, is made out of sagala, which they say is the heaviest substance in existence. These are all dead-on accurate depictions of Sirius B, the star that cannot be seen. They also speak of a third star, which is yet to be confirmed. However, it is speculated based on the gravitational anomalies in the Sirius system that there may be a third star that they just have not found yet. They even have drawings of the orbits and the relationship between stars A and B, which align with scientifically observed behavior. The reference of these gods being part sea serpent, amphibious in nature, seem to realign these beings with the creation of water as well. Having seen the congressional hearing saying that the government thinks that these beings may be coming out of the ocean and living in the oceans, I often wonder if, in alignment with concepts such as within, so without, or to go out, you need to get out of something, you need to go through it or in it, is it possible that the easiest way off the planet may be found in the ocean? I'm not sure I believe it, but it's kind of fun to think about. Now, going back to the Bible. In Ezekiel 1:4 through 10, it reads, I looked up and saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight. Their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on the 4 sides, they had human hands. All 4 men had faces and wings, and the wings of one touched the wings of another. Each went straight ahead. They did not turn as they moved. In verse 15, it says, As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and the structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all of the 4 rims were full of eyes all around. And in verse 25 it says, Then there came a voice from above the vault over their heads as they stood with lowered wings. Above the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and high above the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw that, and from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal, as if full of fire, and from there down he looked like fire, and brilliant light surrounded him. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. When I saw it, I fell face down and heard the voice of the one speaking. Now, interestingly enough, we see something similar in a description about a temple of Enki. In the Oxford ETCSL translation, T.1.1.4, it says, In those remote days when the fates were determined in a year, when An, their major god, another A name, brought about abundance, and people broke through the earth like green plants. Then the lord of the Abzu, King Enki, the lord who determines the fates, built his temple entirely of silver and lapis lazuli. Its silver and lapis lazuli were shining daylight. Into the shrine of Abzu he brought joy. And artfully made bright crenellations rising out of the Abzu, reminder this is freshwater or groundwater, was erected for Lord Nemed. He built the temple from precious metal, decorated it with lapis lazuli, and covered it abundantly with gold. In Eridu, he built a house on the bank. Its brickworks make utterances and gives advice. Its eaves roar like a bull. The temple of Enki bellows. During the night, the temple praises its Lord and offers its best for him. Now, further down it says, as it has been built as Enki has raised Eridu up, it is artfully built mountain which floats on the water. When Enki rises, the fish rise with him in waves. Like the sea, he is awe-inspiring. Like a mighty river, he instills fear. The Euphrates rises before him as it does before the fierce south winds. The punting pole of Nora, his oars are small reeds. When Enki embarks, the year will be full of abundance. The ship departs of its own accord, tow rope held by itself. This definitely sounds like a large, moving temple to me. These concepts of shining metal, lapis lazuli, making loud noises, and moving on their own keep being associated with the gods. Going back to Exodus 24, 1 and 2 says, and then the Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abu, and the 70 elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others may not come near, and people may not come up with him. In verse 9 it states, Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright as the blue sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of Israelites. They saw God and ate and drank. Verse 15, which occurs later, says, when Moses went up to the mountain on the cloud covered it, a cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud and as he went up the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Now, lapis lazuli in the ancient world was frequently found in Afghanistan. In fact, evidence of its mining goes back as far as the 7th millennium BC. Lapis lazuli artifacts have been found that are dated back to 7,570 BC at Barana, which is the oldest site of the Indus Valley civilization. It's considered spiritually connected to cosmic wisdom, celestial guidance, and a deeper connection with the universe. Some sites say it holds cosmic blueprint, facilitating spiritual awakening and interdimensional travel to tap into cosmic wisdom and guidance. It's also considered granting access to divine guidance, wisdom, and stellar awareness. It's also considered an energy shield. In Exodus 28:18, the middle stone on the second row of the high priest's breastplate is called a sapphire, which Strong's translates to sapphire. But the BDB lexicon states it could be translated to either sapphire or lapis lazuli. They actually say it was most likely lapis lazuli because sometimes this stone is being described as having flecks of gold in it. And sapphires do not have gold, but lapis lazuli has pyrite and other metals mixed into it. Lapis lazuli was found in the region of Ur on a cache of skeletons dating back to at least 1900 to 1800 BC, which is about the time of Abraham. It was found on their headdresses and other items around these skeletons. Now, traveling to the American continent and looking at the indigenous people there, many indigenous people remember contact with beings that they say are from the stars, and the ones from underground as well. The Cherokee creation myth has the sky woman who falls from sky world and lands on the back of Great Turtle. As she plants seeds from the celestial garden, the earth begins to grow, forming the land that the Iroquois inhabit. This story underscores the nurturing aspect of the earth and the interconnectedness of life. Now, it's not only beings from the stars and the oceans, but also from within the earth. According to Hopi stories, the ant people were small, humble beings who lived underground. They were kind and wise and helped humans in time of need. They're described as having bodies, large heads, and long limbs. Thin bodies, large heads, and long limbs, and they lived underground. It's said that they understand the secrets of survival, farming, and even the stars in the sky. These ant people are said to have sheltered and taught the Hopi in times of need. The Hopi believe our world has gone through different ages or worlds, and each was destroyed due to human mistakes, greed, war, corruption. When the world was about to end, the ant people rescued the Hopi people. This happened on 3 occasions when fire rained down from heaven, floods covered the earth, and then ice covered the land. They teach peace and harmony. They were not only kind, but intelligent. Some legends say that they were connected to the stars. They may have come from another world or have had special knowledge of the cosmos. Petroglyphs show ant-like figures standing beneath a spiral, which is potentially a portal or a stargate. The Hopi believe that they will return at the end of the 4th world, which they believe may come soon. Now going back to the Bible, to the prophet Elijah. About 300 years after Moses, we see prophet Elijah also have a mysterious experience. It is said that Elijah was taken up to heaven alive around 850 BC. Elijah is attributed many miracles, including resurrection, calling down fire from the sky, and ascension to heaven alive. Elijah was historically a Yahwist and was a very big part of progressing into monolatry, which is believing that one God, knowing many gods exist, but believing one is more important for the Israelites, okay? In 2 Kings 1, Moab rebels against Israel after the death of Ahab, and Uzziah falls through the lattice in the chamber, and he's sick. He asks for a messenger to go to the god of Ekron, Beelzebub, to see if he will recover. Elijah gets a premonition about this, intercepts the messenger, and sends him back with a warning. The king finds out what happens, and he sends an army. Verse 9 says, Then the king sent into him a captain of 50 with his 50, and went to them, and behold, he sat on top a hill. He spake unto them, Thou man of God, the king has said, Come down. Elijah responds, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And then this happens 2 more times, consuming the captains and their 50 men each. In 2 Kings 2, it begins as, When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind. It then goes on to describe Elijah trying to kind of be alone to be taken up, and one of the prophets that he taught, Elisha, keeps following him. First to Bethel, then to Jericho, then to Jordan. And they're also being followed by 50 men who know Elijah is going to be taken up, and they want to witness it, okay? So he takes off his cloak as he and Elisha are walking. They come to the Jordan. He takes up his cloak and he slaps the water and it divides so Elisha and Elijah can cross on dry land. Elijah asks Elisha, Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha responds, Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit. Elijah says he's asked a difficult thing, Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not. In verses 11 through 12, it says, as they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. Interestingly, Jesus gives some allusions to possibly not being as for Elijah or his actions as everybody else is. In Luke 9, verses 51 through 56, in the Interlinear Bible, it states, it came to pass that in completing the days of the ascension of him, that he steadfastly set to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers before the face of him. And having gone, they entered into a village of Samaritans, so as to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because the face of him was going to Jerusalem. Having seen it, now the disciples James and John said, Lord, will it you that we should call fire from heaven and consume them? Having turned then, he rebuked them and said, you know not of what spirit are you, for the Son of Man did not come to destroy the lives of men, but to save. So basically, Jesus is going to go to Jerusalem to fulfill the prophecy. He sends some people ahead to secure him a space in Samaria. The Samaritan says, I'm not letting you stay if you're going to Jerusalem. And the disciples were like, hey, should we call down fire like Elijah did? And he says, you don't know what spirit you're working with. We're here to improve, not to destroy. He told them that their spirit, their soul, their father represented something different than Elijah and Yahweh. Elijah, the one taken to heaven alive in a fiery chariot. There have been many sightings longly documented throughout history. The 1400s, the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s, right up until as recently as yesterday. Tales of ancient battles in the sky, strange sightings, odd gatherings of beings. So what are these beings? They often show up with technology. Others seem to teleport in. Some seem to want to help humanity, teaching and growing and understanding. Others only seem to want to harm or oppress. Some are identified as angels, others as demons, some as gods, others as goddesses. Since God is omnipotent and omnipresent, therefore in everything and everyone, is it possible that these are one of the fractals of Source's manifestation of self? Are they beings that are close to or far from the vibration of Source, depending on their intention? Possibly the ones who need technology to slip into our dimension have a lower vibration and perceive naive, forgetful humans as gullible. So they use that technology and understanding of manifestation in the universe, sound and frequency, to exalt themselves as gods and rule humanity, hoping humanity will not remember that they're made from the same divine material as Source as they are. I'll leave that for you to think about, but I will say this. I can locate Source right here within myself, and I see aspects of Source reflected in every living soul that I meet. It seems to me like, knowing we all have direct access to Source, that a magical being with mechanical method of transportation would probably be a step down in my book. But that's just a very personal decision and not the pathway for all. In the meantime, Thank you for helping me to bring the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Come back next week and we're going to discuss the numbers 2, 7, a combination of the two, and a few others along the way. What they mean in different religions, cultures, and beliefs, and even how they've been found amongst artists and scientists and mathematicians. And I'll see you then.